here. In 2019, Patrick Reed won 16 under. And then in 2013, Adam Scott was 11 under. And then before that, 9 under was the winning score. So not the lowest scores that we typically see, going 20 under or anything like that. But that's what we're dealing with for this week. If you want to look at if this will load, a hole by hole breakdown. Have lots of computer issues I've been pretty smooth overall since I started doing these, and I anticipated a ton of issues, but today's the day that things are starting to bust. So that's all right. I got a lot of information in my spreadsheet that I can still go over. But one thing I always like to do is pull up this course fit tool and just kind of look at the most important stats for a particular course. Data Golf does a really good job breaking this down. They do have a slight emphasis on driving distance, but it's not necessarily substantially more important than what you have at your average PGA Tour course. Just a little bit. Driving accuracy gets a little bit de-emphasized. So basically what this is showing is that driving distance is always more important, more indicative of success than driving accuracy, but the driving distance isn't necessarily that much more important than it typically is. So I'm not going to look at golfers who only launch it, and that kind of makes sense with Patrick Reed having won here back in 2019. So again, I'm seeing some questions in, so I will get to those. If you have any, just hit up the comment section, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and I will get to those. Question, one and done pool. Who do you like for a top 10 finish between English, Berger, Matsuyama, and Reed? I'm going to go just blindly with Patrick Reed there. And then I will pull up my finder here. I'll pull up all those guys, and we can compare them side by side. Not Bermuda. We got Bentgrass this week, so let me pull that up. So it's a good list of names, and that actually speaks to the depth of the field for this week, and one of the reasons why I think if you're building FanDuel lineups, you can kind of really pepper that 10,000 range. So let's go English, Daniel Berger, Hideki, and Patrick Reed. So of these, my win simulation model does prefer Daniel Berger straight up. So I wouldn't really fault you there. I just like Patrick Reed because of an emphasis on short game for the week. I think it's one of those courses where, yes, distance does matter, but if scores are going to be a little bit tighter toward 10 under par than running away into like the 20 under easily. Now, Patrick Reed's still a pretty good birdie maker, at least better than you would probably expect above field average over the past 50 rounds, according to Fantasy National. But, he's not going to get that distance boost, but really none of these guys are. It's just the short game is so good that I like Patrick Reed for this week. I think Daniel Berger, I guess if it's a one and done and it runs through the PGA Tour season, I wouldn't fault you for going just with Daniel Berger because you're running out of chances. But if it's like through the calendar year, I think this is a really good week for Patrick Reed to have a pretty safe top 10 finish. Still have JT, Bryson, Brooks left, so figuring out who to save for the final two events. If you've got those three for this week, like for the final 3 weeks, I would probably just go with those three. For this week, I would lean JT because the short game is a lot better for JT than Bryson and Brooks. And by short game, I mean specifically the wedge play. I would not fault you for just playing those three. So again, to answer your first question, I'd say Reed, then Berger. And then for your second question, I would rank them this week, JT, Brooks, and then Bryson. So I think that this week is really intriguing from a DFS perspective because we've got Jon Rahm this week at a really small, like a really short number on FanDuel Sportsbook at 10-1. But that's not quite reflected in his FanDuel salary, right? It's 12,000. Jordan Spieth is 100 cheaper in salary than Jon Rahm is, and as you can see here, my win simulation model is really high on Jon Rahm. Not surprisingly, my win simulation model, for anyone who hasn't tuned in before, it's based on your past year of data. It is adjusted for the field strengths you play in across the PGA Tour, European Tour, and Korn Ferry Tour, but that's not really relevant for this week. And also recency. So it puts in more weight on more recent rounds, so things about a year ago, not quite as important. Jon Rahm, it matches the actual win odds that you can bet. I think Jon Rahm is still kind of a fine value despite this tough field. That's how good he's been over the past years, gaining an average of 2.6 adjusted strokes per round against what you would kind of consider the baseline golfer. Next up in this field is Xander at a 2.06. So again, Rahm like half a stroke better than the next best guy. So that's going to reflect in the win odds. But again, it's different between betting Jon Rahm, which I still think is like, I don't really bet favorites, especially in tough fields like this, but he's kind of a good value. But when it comes to a FanDuel salary of 12,000, I think that Jon Rahm is kind of a lock for cash games, and you don't have to particularly worry about it. He's just that good at everything. 99th percentile in strokes gained off the tee, which is not a key stat for me necessarily, but he's also 80th percentile in approach play, 84th around the green, 71st in putting over the past year. That also accounts for field strength and recency, putting those more recent rounds up the list. And even if you remove that elite off the tee play, Rahm's in the 90th percentile in fairway through green strokes gained, which I think is kind of intriguing this week because distance is not a must. And anytime that's the case, kind of levels out the playing field. Webb Simpson's done well here in the past, for example. So guys like Ian Poulter have finished well here. So for me, Rahm's the number one on FanDuel without a whole lot of issue. The question sort of becomes who's number two. And honestly, for me, it's going to be Jordan Spieth at 11.9. I know we're not getting a ton of savings. I know Spieth's going to be popular, but not nearly as popular as Jon Rahm. All the research I've done into this has shown that the betting favorite and the highest salary golfer pretty much locks to be the most popular plays. So I think Rahm is, especially being Jon Rahm in the form that Jon Rahm's in right now, is going to be super chalky. But Spieth, he's someone who really benefits if we're downplaying off the tee play to a degree, because he jumps up to the 97th percentile in that fairway through green strokes gained over the past year. And his off the tee play is moving up, but this still looks at a full year. And even though it's more weighted toward recent rounds, we're looking at someone who's a little bit still kind of bogged down, not the best driver out of the studs. But for me, Spieth with that elite short game, elite iron play, really appealing for this week. But I mean, you look at a field like this, and I wouldn't talk anyone out of any of the golfers. Let's see here. I'll zoom in so you can see these names a little bit better. But Rahm, Spieth. I'm not super high on Rory, even though the irons are back. Yeah, like maybe Abe Answer, but this should set up well for Answer, honestly. I think he was actually runner-up here in 2019, if I'm not mistaken. Like, I would probably say Sam Burns at 9,400, and so you could flip Neiman over him. You'd have to get like 9,400 before I would actively like talk you out of somebody specific for this week, and that's kind of just what we're dealing with. And so that kind of takes me back to something that I've researched in the past of tougher field strengths. When you look at an optimal FanDuel lineup in a tougher field, you basically see that the winner comes from a higher salary tier because you're not getting winners in like the 7,000 range ever, the 8,000 range, the low 9,000 sometimes. But the winner is more likely to be someone in this like 10-8 range and up roughly. And then you're also not seeing as much salary vacated in an optimal lineup. In a full field event, you'll get things, you kind of see things skewed whenever like 2 or 3 value plays just really, go nuts. You don't typically see that in a full or a small field, tough field. So this week, I think a balanced approach makes a lot of sense from a daily fantasy standpoint. That's why a lot of these names highlighted in green. Like, yes, I love Jon Rahm, Jordan Spieth. I always love Xander. I think he's a great play. He's number 1 on my combo model, which combines the stats I'm looking at and weighting in, and also the adjusted strokes gain numbers over the past year, where, again, Xander is second behind only Jon Rahm. But you see a lot of these names in this tier. Patrick Cantlay, I think, is undervalued. I think he's a good win bet, too, at 33-1. Victor Hovland, one of my favorite plays this week at 10,500. I think that he's just undersalaried. But at a certain point, these guys have to be undersalaried. Like, I could say Paul Casey, Webb Simpson, undersalaried, because they should be higher, but you can't really make everyone 11,000. It doesn't really work that way. So anytime we get a major-esque field, we just take these, we can take these savings, right? And say, I'm going to build around Hovland, Webb, Casey, Patrick Reed, Tyrrell Hatton, Joaquin Niemann, and you will feel good about all 6 of your golfers. And that, makes us feel a little bit fuzzy, but it also comes down to probabilities, where if you are rostering some golfers down here, and I do have some tagged, I think it's actually kind of a surprisingly good value week with Cam Tringale, Kevin Strowman, Keegan Bradley is really, really strong tee to green right now. Charlie Hoffman's made all 3 cuts here since 2009. Like, you can make that case, but whenever you're rostering golfers down here, you see the win equity just drop pretty substantially for most of these golfers. And so you're saying, well, I'm gonna play Charlie Hoffman. That's gonna free me up to pick the winner. You better pick the winner with that salary that you saved. And I know you need to pick the winner anyway. But what you're really doing is saying you're kind of getting yourself 5 chances to hit that winner, as opposed to all 6. And if you go back and look at the individual winners of FedEx Cup events, it's the studs. Like, just go back and look. I tweeted about this. It's the superstars virtually every time. And so you need to kind of find out where that demarcation line is for you. And for me, it's kind of around Jason Kokrak. I like some of these values: Cam Tringale, Kevin Strowman, Keegan Bradley, Charlie Hoffman, even Taylor Gooch down at 7,800. But I'm going to limit my rosters to one of those golfers, because I don't feel confident. Well, I'm not. I know the probabilities, right? And you don't want to say, I'm going to roster 3 of these value guys so that I can get Rahm, Spieth, and Cantlay, and those are going to be the top 3, because they kind of have to be the top 3 in order for that value to score enough points, especially if there aren't a lot of birdies this week, because that's going to put a higher percentage of FanDuel points on the finishing positions as opposed to birdies. Like, that's what we're going to see if the scores play closer to like 12 under as opposed to 20 under. So that's kind of what I'm seeing this week from a roster construction standpoint, where I'm going to be building around specifically Victor Hovland, Patrick Cantlay, Webb Simpson, Paul Casey. I think it's just a really strong tier in this range. Patrick Reed as well for this week. That's just kind of how things go in these types of fields. So I'm going to bump over to my win simulations for the week. Again, any final questions, get those in on any of the chats, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. But for now, I'm going to look at some of my favorite bets. And this is what I was talking about with Jon Rahm being a positive expected value, which is kind of surprising with that almost 10% win probability for this week. It's really flat behind him. And so I think part of the reason that you see value on him is you're going to, when you see substantial value, like 0.8 points on any golfer in the top like 10, you're going to see golfers who are overvalued based on the model. And we see that with Rory McIlroy down here. I like Rory better than the model does, but the model is accounting for a lot of the poorer play from the early part of 2021, which is still part of his data set. Again, the irons are really strong right now, but That's not enough for me, and for the model, I should say, in this instance, to like him as an outright bet. Brooks Koepka, always super hard to model because he just has those weeks where he's not fully engaged. And so we see bad value on him. Same for DJ and Colin Morikawa, not because they're like super unlikely to win relative to other golfers, but they just happen to be the ones who are closest to Rahm at 17-1. You can get someone like Hovland, who right now really, really strong tee to green numbers. We've seen winners here at Liberty National rank between 20th and 32nd. So on average, 26th in strokes gained putting for the week that they won. Victor Hovland, obviously his strengths are primarily ball striking, but also tee to green, not necessarily putting, although his putting hasn't been the 70th percentile over the past year relative to this field with that, field strength adjustment. So that's pretty strong. It's been trending up, but tee to green, I think, that's what puts Victor Hovland toward the top of the win simulation model. Put some value on him. Xander, also a value. And someone else, the guy kind of skipped over and getting back to now, Jordan Spieth. The model doesn't really like him that much, but I do. So I'm going to disagree with the model a little bit here. Bump up Jordan Spieth. He's one of my favorite win bets for the week. I'm kind of narrowing things down to Spieth and Hovland to start my betting card. Jordan Spieth, just we've seen winners here not necessarily be nuking it off the tee. Some of the best golfers who have done well at this course, not necessarily like launching it off the tee. So that fits well for what Jordan Spieth can do at his peak. He can putt really well, obviously. And so for me, Jordan Spieth is the first place I'm looking from a betting card. And then it kind of helps because I get Victor Hovland down there at 31-1 in that range to kind of balance things out and go from there. As for some longer shots, maybe some top 10s, top 20s, Joaquin Niemann, I like him this week. Really affordable salary on FanDuel. Slight value here at 65-1 to win outright, but very much in play for a top 10 for this week. Cam Tringali, kind of a top 20 bet. Charlie Hoffman, someone I mentioned, maybe if you anchor your FanDuel lineups with him, like one golfer in that tier is going to be, it's going to open you up to get back up to someone like Jon Rahm if you want to go that route. Too many of those guys not necessarily appealing to me, but a top 20 for Charlie Hoffman, who's got 93rd percentile adjusted iron play over the past year, has actually made all three cuts. It's one of four golfers who have made all three cuts at this course in his career, along with Phil Mickelson in this field, Phil Mickelson, Webb Simpson, and Adam Scott. So I think Charlie Hoffman, standout value play, also in play for a top 20 for this week. So I think it's a really intriguing week for DFS, but also from a betting standpoint. For the start of the FedEx Cup playoffs, you can do things like look at FedEx Cup standings and try to play that angle, but I don't really get into that because you never know how particular golfers are going to react to the pressure. That's one of the narratives that I tried to kind of bake in the past, and it hasn't necessarily led to success. Like you can point to it after the fact and say, yes, he made a cut because of the FedEx Cup standings. Sometimes it doesn't always work out. Someone like Justin Rose, 3-putted to just to miss. And so I don't really like to go that route. But honestly, I think there are a lot of good values here. Another two golfers here who rate out as positive expected values in my model, Tony Finau and Tyrrell Hatton. They were super hot. Now they're not quite so hot, but they have really nice both FanDuel salaries in the mid 9,000 range, and then also good win odds. It's plus 6,000 each. I think those guys are both live for outright wins, honestly, but also top 10s, especially Finau, because Finau has not converted wins at a very high rate at all, unfortunately. But Tony Finau, really strong long-term adjusted form, and I think that this is one of those spots where you look at Tony Finau and say he's trending down. It's not really the case in his data, but the long-term form still looks quite good for Finau, so that makes him a slight betting value for this week. I went over Hoffman. I'll see just the best values. I think John Rahm's probably soaking up a lot of that positive expected value. Tyrrell Hatton, Hovland, Finau, Harmon. Talked about all these guys. Jason Kokrak, I love. He's done pretty well here in the past. Just a salary of 9,100. Pull him up on the Finder real quick because he's one of my favorite value plays. Really good off the tee numbers, which is not a key, like the most key stat this week, but it is something that I'm waiting in for sure. And then the approach play still strong for this field, and the putting numbers for Kokrak surprisingly strong. He's actually had some long-term adjustments to his putting. So for me this week, I think Kokrak just a standout. I think he's very much in play for an outright at 75 to 1. Also, if you're not quite on board with that, top 10, top 20 for Kokrak, but also someone who offers a lot of salary relief for this week. And I can't really talk too much about Jason Kokrak without bringing up the fact that he is a Heat Check favorite, the Heat Check podcast that Jim Sonis and I do every Tuesday for every PGA event. You guys know you're probably all just waiting for me to stop talking about golf so that you can ask Jim about baseball this slate for this evening. So Jim's going to come on in just a second, and you can get all of those Phillies questions for tonight. Comment from Miss Jackie Moon. I don't know much about golf, but I'm fascinated with your win simulator. It's awesome. Thank you. Take that, Jim. Jim always is talking bad about my win simulations. Always makes me feel kind of bad about them.
Wait, what?
So it's nice to get some reassurance here.
Jackie, don't side with him. Come on. Jackie, you are my friend via these chats. I don't know why you would possibly compliment Brandon. Also, is it like storming where you are right now? Like you look very dark. And it's kind of grim. Is there like a monsoon going through Pennsylvania, or what's up here?
No, I asked producer Cal about this before the show, but I
like how his name is now Producer Cal. First name Producer, last name Cal.
Yeah,
Mr. Cal.
But I mean, like when I do the heat check with you, I use one computer that I have all my data on.
Yeah,
and it comes through like really bright.
Yeah.
And it's like the same conditions aside from a little bit later in the day when I do these, but like my other computer with this camera on it is like a lot darker. And I'm always trying to like dodge and find like where I catch the light right. So I think it's my computer. I don't think it's a monsoon. I think a monsoon is just a seasonal reversal. It's not necessarily like a heavy rain or cloudy.
I don't know what that means. Anyway, I'm going to let you go so you can go shovel more Cameron Tringali into your DFS lineups. Take the smart route, take the Kokrak, take the pocket kings, pocket aces, pocket queens, and have yourself a good week. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah, you too. I'm looking forward to all of your baseball knowledge and for the new spreadsheet that I made for you.
That I'm not using. We can pull that up now, actually, and I will show you the eye-bleeding conditional formatting that is still there just for you. You're welcome.
So bad.
You're welcome. Thank you for the new sheet, but I'm not going to use it, so I appreciate it. Either way, that's Brandon Gdula. Check him out on Twitter at Gdula13, and check out for more Brandon. Check out the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast wherever you get your podcast by searching for the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. With that, let's transition now into Major League Baseball for today and get you set for a 14-game slate for tonight, and it is a good one because I think that there are viable pitchers in each salary tier for today. We got some high salary guys, mid-salaried, and a value play I do like quite a bit. Let's start things off here with Jackie over on Twitch. He enjoys data/stat keeping, so something like that is cool to me. Talking about Brandon simulations, trying to get into stats more for a job somewhere in the future. Okay, so Jackie, we'll get you integrated with MLB stats because even if they don't work out for your job, they can at least hopefully win you some money via bets and via some DFS. And of course, as Jackie would hopefully remind us very soon, it is Dinger Tuesday. So of course, a good day to check that out over at FanDuel Sportsbook. Wow, Jackie, good timing. I think you said that right as I was saying it. So good timing on that. So it is indeed Dinger Tuesday for today. I'm sure we'll have questions about dingers. later on. My official home run picks for today on the solo shot this morning, I believe, were Corey Seeger and Chas McCormick. So we'll see once those lineups come out if they're in there for today. They were not at last time I refreshed here. And okay, Chas McCormick batting 6th, which means Chas McCormick guaranteed to go deep for today. Also, Ledmus Diaz batting 4th. So that means Yordan Alvarez. He had a tummy ache last night, so left that game early. So maybe it's an extended tummy ache for Yordan Alvarez. Hopefully nothing more, because that'd be pretty gross. But either way, we have Chas McCormick batting 6th, Ledmus Diaz batting 4th. So let's actually go over here and build out an Astros stack. I know we've got some questions from Mateo on YouTube, but let's start things off here. Talking about the Astros, Mateo was asking on Twitter today about the Astros, so we'll get out in front of this right now and talk about that stack. Let's do this stack with Corbin Burnes, because Burnes is the highest salary pitcher I want to use, and I think you can stack the Astros with Burnes for today. So let's put Ledmus Diaz in there. They're not loaded in yet, but he is batting 4th. And let's put Chas in the outfield as well, batting down in 6th. I want Carlos Correa in there. Let's do that. And then I think let's look into Taylor Jones. Batting 7th, that's high enough to be viable for me. I mean, you can be viable anywhere, but 7th is definitely not a negative by any means. So let's go over here, check out Taylor Jones. He is a righty. In AAA this year, 217 ISO, that's okay. It's not great. It's fine. 42% fly ball rate, that's okay. In the majors, 5.1% barrel rate, 32% fly ball rate, 41% hard hit rate. So the numbers are not bad. Let's see what we can see. Small sample versus lefties. 182 ISO. I mean, it's 24 plate appearances, so kind of who cares? But I don't know. I think you could talk yourself into him if you really needed the savings. You probably don't, I would say, for today. But let's just, see where he's at. Is he minimum salary? $2,100. But he fills third base. That's kind of fun. Okay, so if we do that, 32.25 left, that's not too bad. But if we want to skip over him, if we go Jose Altuve, put him in the utility slot, he's 37. That's not too bad. We can get by with that. And then let's go Yuli, which put us at 29 something. That's not too bad either. So stacking the Astros with Corbin Burnes, very doable for today. Let's start the questions off with Mateo over on YouTube. Do you like the righties in Tampa Bay? That lineup is out. Okay, so let's check out the Rays matchup first. Facing John Means. Means is a guy I loved earlier on this year, but since coming off the IL, things have not been going well. 5.16 skill interactive ERA, 15% strikeout rate, and a lot of fly balls. The one good thing Means has done is limited hard contact, 33% hard hit rate against. Let's pull up the numbers. That's not the right person. Okay, let's go over here, highlight, and the adventures of Jim in Google Sheets continue. Let's see what the results look like for John Means, specifically because he has the low hard hit rate against. You can often see gaps between peripherals and results there, but did let up 3 home runs against Detroit last week, 2 against Tampa Bay in his first start back. So, and I think that might have been before the Nelson Cruz trade. Either way, I think that we can definitely use guys against Means. Let's check out this Rays lineup and see what it looks like. Cruz, yes. Arosarena, yes. Yandy's, he's been hitting more fly balls recently. Margot, yes. Zanino, yes. Luplo, no. Absolutely not. Okay, so let's go over here and check out Yandy specifically because he's been showing more power recently than he has in the past. I would cross off Yandy Diaz in the past because didn't hit enough fly balls, didn't hit for enough power. Still a 115 ISO for the full season. Let's pull up Yandy's numbers. Let's say since the All-Star break and compare what his batted ball data looks like now versus what it looked like before then. Go to the game log. And let's go to StatCast, and let's go from now and check out since the break. In that time, launch angle 14.7%. It was 6.8% overall. Barrel rate is 17%. Yowza. 6.9% overall. A lot more hard contacts. It seems like Yandy Diaz has made some sort of tweak to his swing that is allowing him to get more loft and get more power in his stick. In that time, 286 ISO. So yeah, I'm into Yandy Diaz. Actually, Mateo, honestly, I wasn't initially think I would stack the Rays here because they're a team I am much more inclined to stack versus a righty than a lefty because I love Brandon Lau, love Austin Meadows, love Ji-Man Choi. But if we go Cruz, let's go Yandy. Let's buy into the potential swing changes there. Let's get Margot in there. Arozarena might be a bit too high. I think he's $3,900. That's fine, I think. But let's go Zunino because I love the power. So I think that, Arozarena is fine if you're going like not Burns and you have the salary, but like if I'm trying to save salary to get to Burns, I think this is pretty enticing. So I think I'm higher on a Rays full stack than I was before Mateo. So yeah, I think that they're enticing for me. I'm willing to go there. I think these probably be the four guys I turn to at Burns if I'm going Manoah or going with Logan Webb for today, then I think that I would try to get Arozarena in there, likely over Margot. So if it's Webb or Manoah, put in Arozarena over Margot, and that'd be the 4-player stack for the Rays. Savon is asking best game for offense. Okay, let's go over here, check out some temperatures. I mean, like if we're just talking about overall conditions, it'd be the Rockies, Coors Field for today because the temperature's high, the wind's blowing out. It's a great park. I will say though that like I like Marquez, very good pitcher. So that lowers me on the Padres. Rockies facing a combination likely of Matt Strahm and one of their right-handed relievers, one of the longer relievers. So I think that the Rockies are fine, but they're not like a priority for me. So it's the best environment for hitting, but it's not, my favorite option to stack for today. Only looking at one side of that game. I mean, the Angels and Tigers game is pretty enticing on both sides. The problem is that like there aren't a lot of individual batters I want to use just because the Tigers pretty high salaried. The Angels don't have a lot of guys I like using. So that might be the best game for offense, but not the best game for DFS. Let's talk to Diffuse on YouTube. How well are the Mariners grading out for you? They're fine. Taylor Hearn has been doing a better job of suppressing hard contact since he moved into the rotation. Will that stick? I don't know. Probably not. He doesn't let up a ton of balls in play because he does walk too many guys. I think they're fine. I just don't like using the Mariners against lefties that much. Like you can talk me into some one-offs here, more so than you could talk me into a full stack. Like some of the righties in the Mariners, sure, but like I just think they're fine. I think that Hearn is not someone we need to stack against, and the Mariners not a team I need to stack specifically versus lefties, so they're fine to me. Jackie, MLB is where I'm starting. I'm making a spreadsheet centered around home runs. Okay, that's a good place to start. Good for your Dinger Tuesday needs, Jackie, as well. And homers translate well to DFS too. John, what is the best value stack? Can I say the Astros? Is that cheating, John? It might be cheating. We had Chas McCormick at a good spot. We got Aledmys Diaz at a good spot. Yuli Gurriel's at a good spot. I think the Astros actually count as being a good value stack. I think the Rays are a decent value stack too if you count Margot in there because look at this. You got Yandy Diaz, Margot. None of those guys super high salaried. They work. I think the Twins work out pretty well. Rooker's $2,900, Donaldson $3,000. Don't want to rise, but Garver's 27. So I think that these guys, the Twins are kind of, that's fine. It's a fine lineup. But I think like Rooker, Donaldson, Garver, all those guys get you some value there. So you actually got a couple options between the Rays, Astros, Twins, who can get you a lot of value. And then I want to use that value to get up to the Dodgers for a stack as well. Eric is asking, running a 4-3-1 stack today. So 4 players on one team, 3 players on another, and then a one-off in there. Is a one-of that you prefer over Max Kepler? A one-off you prefer over Max Kepler at $3,200. So let's go over here, check out, I'm assuming it's an outfielder, and we'll just restrict ourselves to outfielders. If it's a utility guy, Corey Seager's $3,200. I prefer him over everybody today. Pretty much everybody. I think Kepler does work out pretty well. So I'm not going to say no to Kepler. If you want some alternatives, what are Bailey Ober's batted ball numbers looking like? 41% hard hit rate, 38% fly ball rate. We can get some dingers off of that. So Franmil Reyes, I think you could put in that discussion. AJ Pollock, you could put in that discussion as well. Honestly, I might just stick with Kepler. I think that he's pretty fine. And I'd be definitely okay with him. So probably stick in Kepler. Otherwise, I would turn to Franmil Reyes or turn to AJ Pollock is being one-offs in the outfield at $3,200. Jackie, with the Connor Joe home run prop yesterday, first plate appearance of the game, so no sweat there, which was good. I know my colleague Tom Vecchio is on CJ Crone, last plate appearance of the game. So a little numberFire sandwich there with the dingers for the Rockies. They were very kind to us for sure. Jerry says, good day, Jim. Good day, Jerry. How do you feel about these teams? The Chicago Cubs, Cincinnati, Toronto, and the Angels. The Cubs are in a good matchup. I just hate them. They don't have a lot of guys I want to use right now. Like Schwindel's fine. There are some individual guys like Wisdom's okay. It's a bad lineup. So I think that you can get a couple guys in there, Jerry, but they're a tough team to stack just because they're really, really wretched. So not as high there. The Reds are facing Kyle Hendricks. Hendricks has been slipping a bit recently, got rocked his last time out. That was the game where the Brewers scored, I think, like 17 runs. A lot of them came after Hendricks left, but really low strikeout rate. The batted ball data is still pretty good. So the Reds are fine, but also not a priority for me either. Toronto facing Eric Fetty. Fetty's been getting better recently, but that's a very small sample. Past 3 starts with more cutters instead of sinkers. Very small sample. Still letting up a lot of balls in play. Still letting up hard contact. So Blue Jays number 1 of those teams. Angels, I like the individual batters of Shohei Ohtani and kind of Jared Walsh. Walsh hasn't done a lot since he came back, so I can't get too enthused about him. Check out Brandon Marsh's numbers versus righties, because Casey Mize has struggled a lot against lefties this year. Marsh is a lefty in that Angels lineup. Let's go here. I kept scrolling too far. Okay, Brandon Marsh. Sort here by plate appearances versus righties. 73 plate appearances, 29% fly ball rate, a lot of strikeouts. So yeah, I think that the Angels are more so just Ohtani and Walsh for me. So I'd rank those teams, Blue Jays 1, probably Reds 2, just because they're very good. Angels 3, and then Cubs 4. I will say though that Ohtani and Walsh, good one-off plays on the Angels for today. Trappa 95 over on YouTube. Top stacks for today. Love the Astros. Love the Dodgers. Very good at the Rays and Twins. Higher on the Rays now than I was this morning, where I thought that they were kind of just okay. Talked myself into Yandy Diaz. Like the righty-heavy nature of their lineup. So Rays moving up for me in a team that I'm very good with, and also Rockies in there too. Kenneth is asking, do you like Manoah at low roster rates tonight? Salvatore does like Manoah, and I agree, Salvatore. I think that Manoah is in a really good spot. Also just a good pitcher. The numbers I have from Manoah over his past 5 starts with fewer four-seam fastballs, going to more sinkers. In general, sinkers suck. Bad pitch. Don't use sinkers. But Manoah has a good one. 26% whiff rate on his sinker, according to Baseball Savant. 32% strikeout rate in this 5-start sample. Facing a pitcher tonight, which does mean he's subject to leave early due to a pinch hitter, but also means he gets to face a pitcher. So that's a good trade-off there. Good batted ball data. The Nationals terrible since they traded away everyone except for Juan Soto. So yeah, I like Manoah a lot. I would like him, Kenneth, even if he were not low rostered. He might not be tonight, I would say. I think that there's a good enough sentiment around him and people know the Nationals stink, so I wouldn't assume he'll be low rostered for tonight. But I like him regardless. So Kenneth and Salvatore, I am very on board with Alek Manoah. He is my number 2 guy behind Corbin Burnes tonight. And honestly, like for single entry, if it weren't for all the value, I would talk myself into Manoah. But like with McCormick, Diaz, the Twins guys, the Rays guys, I can make it work pretty easily with Burnes. So Manoah's 2, but he's in the conversation for number 1. Kyle, where does a Philly stack rank versus Widener for tonight? I had been operating on this something to be Caleb Smith as a bulk guy. So maybe that they announced. Let me just do a quick Twitter search here to see if they have announced that. Taylor Widener will start for the Diamondbacks on Tuesday. Okay, so thank you, Kyle. Let's pull up Taylor Widener here and check out his numbers. They announced that after I was on, waiting to come on with Brandon. So, okay, so he's coming out the IL. And Widener 4.54 skill interactive ERA, 24% strikeout rate. Really bad batted ball data, though. So let's, I have Caleb Smith on here. So the Phillies better against lefties and righties. So that's a downgrade in those terms. Let's pull up the Phillies numbers versus righties. and see if there are guys we can get super excited about here versus Widener. What did I just click? Okay, there we go. Let's also pull up their projected lineup for today to see what the salaries look like. Because again, I was thinking they'd be facing a lefty and not a righty. Okay. Harper, obviously always good. Nothing else to say there. Let's see other guys who have these viable numbers. Rhys Hoskins, that's a lot of power versus righties. Rhys obviously not available for today. Didi, Brad Miller. Okay. Scroll down here. Didi 209 ISO, 46% fly ball rate. Okay. We can work with that. So Didi Gregorius could be a play we could turn to. Odubel Herrera, not a guy I try to root for ever. 168 ISO, high enough to be a consideration from a DFS perspective. Real Muto you consider as well. It's just not a lot of dudes you truly want to use. Brad Miller I'm okay with. So I think that they're fine against Widener. Widener is not like an auto stack type guy because he does get enough strikeouts. He walks some guys, which does suppress balls in play a bit. So I think they're fine, is what I'd say, Kyle. I would not put them above the Rays, would not put them above the Astros, Twins, Dodgers. So I think they're at best fifth, and they might wind up being exactly fifth, but I think that I can't put them too much higher than that just because, I'd rather have them versus a lefty than a righty. Savon is asking, can you rank the Philly players for me? Bryce Harper, 1. Probably going to go Real Muto, number 2. Odubel Herrera, 3. Didi Gregorius, 4. I guess and then it's McCutchen or Segura, 5. I don't really like to use either all that much against righties, but it's that's why I'm not super jazzed about stacking them. It's hard to get to a big number. If you have Salvatore for Harper, get him because I think he's a great one-off, but less enthused about the secondary guys in the Phillies. Savon, best team/stacks for single entry. Okay, so for single entry, I think given the value, I'm okay going with Burns. So looking for stacks we can use while using Corbin Burns as our pitcher. We're looking at the likely chalky stacks for today. Looks like Corbin should be still pretty popular, despite the fact it's Marquez is a good pitcher, Dodgers popular, Astros popular. So I think the Rays actually do grade out pretty well. Means has some name value tied to him, but hasn't been pitching well since he came off the IL. So I think the Rays are actually a pretty good single entry stack. I would still be high in the Astros because the value's there. So I would say Astros and Rays, couple good teams from a one-off perspective for today. Eric says, awesome. I have Seeger. That's in the lineup we were talking about before at the 4-3-1. I think Corey Seeger is one of the best plays on this slate. He might be the best play. Among hitters, I think he's the best play. So Corey Seager, my favorite play for today. Julius on Facebook is asking for the top 3 pitchers for tonight. Give me Corbin Burns 1. Give me Alek Manoah 2. Give me Logan Webb number 3. We have not discussed Logan Webb yet. Let's do that right now. Facing the Mets, not a great offense versus righties right now. 25% strikeout rate. Great park for pitching as well. Low ISO for the Mets. Webb has been throwing more sinkers and more curveballs. I mean, I guess it's a curveball or a slider, depending on how you classify it. Since he came back, really good fly ball rate, 26% strikeout rate, not super high, but had a lot of strikeouts in his past 2 starts. So if you want to spend down, Logan Webb, really good option, $7,600. If you go Webb, you can go Altuve, Correa, you can go Cruz or Rosarena. Everyone you want to use is in play with Logan Webb. So I would say Webb number 3 for me. Just because the salary savings for him are really, really enticing. Savon is asking, how is Milwaukee for tonight? Are they facing Jack Flaherty? Where are we? Oh, they're facing Adam Wainwright. No, Adam Wainwright's really good. So no Milwaukee for me tonight. Jerry. All right. Jerry's home run calls are in. He's got Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Ryan Mountcastle. Mountcastle is facing Rasmussen. Okay. Interesting. And then I believe it's Rasmussen. Could have that wrong. And then Brandon Lau. Lau facing lefty. Is he in the lineup for tonight? He might have been left out. I know they had a pretty righty-heavy lineup. Batting 6th. I don't tend to use Lau versus lefties, but let's make sure I'm not being too dismissive of Mr. Lau here because he is a good hitter against righties, tremendous hitter against righties. So let's pull up the numbers on old Brandon Lau versus lefties. Lau against lefties, 194 ISO is not bad. 46% fly ball rate. Does strike out a lot, but hey, you're looking for dingers. Jerry, I like it. I like the creativity. I think that works. I would rank other Rays above him, but I like your thinking there. Jerry. Jackie, which three players would you stack from the Dodgers? Okay, let's go over to the Dodgers here. Pull up their projected lineup versus a righty and Will Crow. And Crow is a pitcher against whom you can use either righties or lefties. So we don't need to care too much about the handedness of the batter. Let's check out Will Smith to see, did he play last night or did he sit? Okay, good. So he sat last night, means he should play. He's generally catching like 3 of every 4 days. So if he sat last night, he should be good to go for today. I tend to use him a ton because he's great. And people don't like using catchers on FanDuel, even though they should when they are as good as Will Smith. Seeger will be 1 there, Jackie. He'll be number 1. So I can tell you that one right now. Just really good batted ball data for him over the past week or so. Think he's going to go on a heater here pretty soon. So Seeger is 1 for me. Probably Max Muncy 2. I'm going to go Will Smith 3. And then we're looking at like AJ Pollock. I think the salary on him at $3,000 is really enticing. So we go with Pollock. I don't know why I put him in utility. That's very stupid. So let's go back over here. I'm going to go with Seeger at shortstop. Let's go with Pollock in the outfield. Let's get Muncy at second base over first base, and Will Smith at catcher / first base. If we do that, let's go with Manoah at pitcher because that's probably more realistic in terms of the pitching options if you're stacking the Dodgers. If I go Manoah, 29.50 left, very easy to do with the Astros and the Twins salaries and the Rays salaries where they're at. So I think that's a pretty good 4-player stack. We get the potential 2, 4, 5, 6 on that team. So I think this is a good stack for the Dodgers for today. Salvatore likes Seattle as an affordable stack for today. Yeah, again, I just don't like them against lefties that much. So it's a good matchup against Hearn. It's not like a great matchup, but it's a good matchup, I would say. I just don't tend to use them a lot against lefties. This is Howard, but it will be Taylor Hearn for today for the Rangers. So they're fine. I just don't tend to use them against lefties as much. Diffuse. Blue Jays still grayed out well as a stack without George Springer, or better for one-offs. They're still good for stacks. Very much so. Do you want to take a look at Eric Fetty, his platoon splits, though? Because the Jays are a very righty-heavy team. And I think that makes it a bit more important to check out the specific platoon splits of the opposing pitcher, because if they're super restrictive against righties, it does make things tougher. We don't care about Wob at this point in the year, but 23% strike area for Fetty versus righties, 32% hard hit rate, 46% ground ball rate, actually lower than it is against lefties. So I think the Jays are still a good stack. Let's check out their lineup here and see. Okay. Yeah, it's still a fine lineup. No real objections there. Downgraded a bit because there's no Springer with no DH there, but I still think they're in play. The reason I'm not as high on them is that, it does hurt to lose Springer, does hurt to lose a DH. Fetty is okay at generating ground balls, so it's enough to make them lower, but they're still very much a consideration for me. Salvatore, best GPP pitcher / stack. I think Manoah's pretty good from a tournament perspective. But for me, I just want the highest scoring guy. So I'd still go Burns. I know he's not going to be low roster, but also I just want the highest scoring guy. And I think that he is definitely somebody who can get there. Stacking, again, I do think that the Rays grade out well for stacking. The Astros grade out well for stacking. And there was the other one we were talking about. He was the Twins. Either way, I think the Astros and the Rays grade out pretty well for stacking from a tournament perspective for tonight. Jerry, are you on the Bundy wagon tonight? No. Absolutely not. I would rather stack against Dylan Bundy than use him as a pitcher. He still had a lot of rough issues since he rejoined the rotation. This is a 3-start sample, but it's very similar to what he was doing towards the end of his first stint in the rotation. Really rough numbers. Second worst skill interactive ERA on the slate. Tigers been better recently. The reason I'm not as high on stacking them is because the salaries are pretty high, but I don't want to use Bundy as a pitcher for today. Jackie says, save Seattle for tomorrow against Fulte. Yes, I was going through the notes for tomorrow already. They are my number 3 stack for tomorrow based on the way things currently shake out, like the Rays and like the Braves a lot. But then I do think that the Mariners number 3 against Mike Fultonevich. So if you want a sneak peek at tomorrow's sheet, There you go. Screenshot that baby and pick it up for tomorrow. Savon asking, how is Atlanta for today? Okay, so Atlanta is facing Sandy Alcantara. Alcantara hasn't been doing as good of a job recently of suppressing hard contact, but in general is a good pitcher at that. So I'll be lower on Atlanta. Also not a great park for stacking for today. Mike, do you like any Joey Votto one-off? Joey Votto, the world's biggest power hitter right now. So, I think that he works because, again, Hendricks, super low strikeout rate. We can definitely get to the Reds. If we were going to get to any Red, it'd be obviously Votto at this point with the way he's been hitting. Just not as high from a stacking perspective for me because Hendricks does a good job of suppressing our contact. So for me, for one-offs, I want to maximize the potential to get like a double dong, and I think the odds that are lower against Hendricks does help. The bullpen is just terrible right now. So that could definitely get that later on. But I think if I'm looking for one-offs, places I'm looking are, I think the Twins are pretty enticing from that perspective. The Rays with Nelson Cruz are pretty enticing. I think and then like Ohtani, definitely a good one-off situation. So I think that's those are the places to be looking more so for today. Jackie, is Miguel Cabrera getting home run number 500 for tonight? I was looking at Miggy's numbers last week, didn't realize that he was on 499, and I was like, oh, wow, he's been hitting a lot of home runs recently. Did not know he's on 499. Shows you how much attention I've been paying to Miguel Cabrera recently. But hey, 499, facing Bundy. Bundy lets up a lot of hard contact and a lot of fly balls. Not saying no, Jackie. Not saying no. Final question comes from Salvatore. Do you think that Marcus Strowman is getting overlooked? Strowman is facing the Giants. A really tough matchup. Not a big strikeout guy, so he'll go overlooked, but I think he should just because that matchup is really, really tough. The Giants, so lefty heavy, so good. So I think he is getting overlooked, but I think that's okay given how tough the matchup is for today. That is all that we have here for today on this FanDuel Fantasy Q&A. But as always, we are back once again tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages, taking your questions for the Wednesday slate. Once again, if you want a sneak peek at tomorrow's slate, there you go. Check that out for tomorrow here at 4 p.m. to break that down. Make sure you're subscribed to your platform of choice, YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, or Twitter, to get notifications as we go live each and every day. Big thank you to Brandon Gdula for getting us started with the PGA discussion earlier on. Follow Brandon on Twitter at Gdula13 and check out the Heat Check Fantasy podcast for more PGA takes for the Northern Trust this week. If you have questions for me, I am on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JimSannes. Also, as Jackie mentioned, big shout out to Calvin Theobald, our video producer for today. Jackie's have a good evening. I would say shout out to Cal. Have a good evening to you as well. Thank you for running the sticks as always. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you tonight. We'll talk to you once again tomorrow. Enjoy your Dinger Tuesday. This has been the FanDuel Fantasy Q&A.